Singapore Stories with Eugene Low.
அகர முதல எழுத்தெல்லாம் அகர முதல எழுத்தெல்லாம்.
She has written 8 books in Tamil and English and has released 5 music albums and has published more than 100 articles in Singapore, India and across the globe. All this while being a young mother.
At that time, it was once in 3 months because my first son was very young. As you told me that, you have to juggle with a number of things, yes, I agree. I understood that fact. Then I took smaller steps. I didn't rush. I took smaller steps. For 1 or 2 years, I had it for 3 months. Through that magazine, I started to write more articles. When that articles were well received, I then sent it to bigger publications. Then the bigger publications got it published. That's how the smaller steps were taken.
A freelance journalist and a vocalist, she is the founder of Kala Manjari, an organization that promotes Tamil classical music. Today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan.
I come from India. My husband is from Singapore. We got married in 1993. Since then, I have been living in Singapore. To go back to my early days, I was born in Karaikudi, a town in deep south Tamil Nadu in India. It's somewhere, you could say, it's somewhere near Madurai, a place known for the Meenakshi Amman temple. And the place I hail from is referred to as Chettinad. Chettinad stands for its cuisine, architecture, culture, and tradition. Ours was an arranged marriage. And as a child, I grew up in a joint family, a very big household. We lived, my uncle's family and our family, we lived together. So that gave me an opportunity to mix with a number of people, all ages, I would say. As a child, I was quite inspirational, always wanting to know what's happening outside the world. Though I was brought up in a town and we had a very conservative upbringing. Those days, the families, especially when it comes to girls, they were very concerned about their safety, and safety is priority for them, for the family, and studies always take a backseat. But my family was educated family. My mother was a graduate, pioneer graduate of the community, and hence she had a very long vision. She wanted us to send to a convent. My father also was a graduate. Ours was a business family. I would say I come from a decently wealthy family. My father had plantations in Karnataka and he had properties in Ipoh, and ours was a business family. So I grew up with all luxury. I never did any work and pampered but not spoiled. So I have 2 older brothers, 1 older sister, and youngest in the family. Yeah, this is basically my childhood days, I would say.
Okay, so what would you do for fun? I mean, what were some of your earliest interests and things that you were attracted to?
Yes, we went to school, regular school, but I was not attracted towards studies. More, I was interested in extracurricular activities. I always liked to sing. My father was a good singer, though he didn't take any practical classes. My brother, my aunt, they were all good singers. And ours was a fun-loving family. And we always sit together and chat about many things, about politics, about sports, about cinema, and many other things. So though I was brought up in a town where there was not much of exposure to outside world, still I had a fair idea of how things work, how political system works, how cinema, how movies are being taken, how a cricket match do take place, and things like that. So I had exposure to many things, I would say. In the beginning, I still remember. Now I am a writer. Sometimes people ask me, what brought you into writing? I really don't have an answer, but I still remember in the early morning when the newspaper comes home, I will be the first person to pick it up and read what is usually cricket was my most interested field then. So I used to first read. My mom always says, first go get ready for your school, that and this. But my interest was to see what is happening around in the world. So probably, the singing and writing, the seeds were sown when I was young itself. That interest would have been there, but I didn't figure it out at that time. As I said, I come from an conservative family, and the priority was the safety and get the child married in a good family. That was the thing in their mind. So so it was like that.
But it sounds like you had an innate sort of curiosity, right, about the things around you.
Yes. That's what now I think. At that time I didn't realize. Now I think I have, and still now many things bother me when I just travel in the road, or when I read a paper, even if it's the corona period and everything. A lot of things come in my mind. Why is this happening? What is this for? What will be the solution? Why should people react that way? Yes, the curiosity has always been there, and I think it's still there.
Yes, that's absolutely something any journalist would need to have, right?
That's right. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And as for singing, I mean, you grew up in a quite a musical sort of family, and as you mentioned, your family members all sang. But was there any formal training involved ever?
Not really at that time, but as I told you, my mom always, she would encourage us to do more things. So she took us to some schools there, music schools, and there were not many opportunities for us to perform. No, the social media was active then for us to, to make use of the platforms. So I think it was all within a small circle. I did, but I didn't take it on a full length. It was only after when I came to Singapore in 1993. I should just say that in 1990, from Karaikudi, I went to Chennai. Chennai is a cosmopolitan city, and the opportunities are more wider there. I did my university there.
Today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan, who has written 8 books in Tamil and English, released 5 music albums, and published more than 100 articles in Singapore, India, and across the globe. She's also the editor of the e-magazine's Online Voice at onlinevoice.info and Sing Ind at thesingind.com, as in the Singapore Indian, I believe, the singind.com. And Soundara's Singapore story continues in a while. I'm Eugene Lowe for Singapore Stories, CNA 938.
Singapore Stories with Eugene Lowe.
She holds a diploma in freelance journalism from the International Correspondence School UK, bachelor's in history from Madras University, and master's in communication management from the University of South Australia. She has worked part-time in Tamil Murasu and as a tutor in new media and communication programs in the National University of Singapore. And she's also released 5 music albums.
I had more exposure, I would say. I had an opportunity to meet different girls from different states of India. They came from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, all girls from different states, different languages speaking girls were there. And I got exposed to many cultures, and my confidence really built up then.
Referring to her studies, university studies in Chennai. And today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan.
Somehow so I did not try taking up classes, but it was only when I came to Singapore, then, in Singapore, Tamil is one of the official languages, and there are a lot of opportunities to perform. That's when I thought I must make use of my skill, and only since 95 or 96, somewhere there, around there, since then, I started regular proper classes.
I see. Okay. And so you finished your university education in India.
Yes.
Before you came to Singapore.
Yes. Then I got married. When I was in my final year, precisely when I was in my final year, and it was an arranged marriage. My husband was studying in UK then, and one day my brother called me and said, so we have seen a boy for you, a good family, and you're getting married and you're going to London. For my first year, few years you'll be in London, then you'll be settling down in Singapore. So we have no choice those days. These days, children are making a lot of fuss for marriage, but in our age, some years back, we had to say yes to our parents.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think in one way it's good.
Yeah, there are always advantages and disadvantages
Yes,
of
true,
every system.
true.
Yeah, and it's a generational thing,
Generation.
right? From that era, yeah.
Yes.
And so it was to the UK first before Singapore.
1993 I got married. Then for 1 year we were in London.
Okay.
Yes. I didn't go much there. The climate was so different from India and Singapore, and I was just coping up, learning to cook, learning to know my husband, and making some friends there. Yeah, it's just 1 year flew very fast. Yes.
But I heard you also studied there, right? No.
I did. After I came to Singapore, it was a long distance education.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that 1 year you were more of a homemaker, still finding your bearings as a wife, as a mother.
Yes,
things
exactly.
like that.
Exactly. Then we toured a bit here and there. We toured England. We toured Europe. That exposure was there. I got to travel to the European countries, and which was a very nice experience, traveling to Switzerland, going to 10,000 feet height, freezing snow, and Paris. Yeah, that was fun.
Okay. And then you came to Singapore to be like a wife, a mother, and you also did some training. You mentioned the singing started, and then you did your diploma in freelance journalism. It's amazing, right? Women can do everything.
Yes. And we all God's blessing, and always in a juggle.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So why did you decide to do so much? Because, a mother is already like a full-time job.
Yeah, mother is a full-time job always.
Yes,
I always
absolutely.
tell my husband for fun, mothers don't have weekends, they don't have holidays. Even during night times, they have calls. So always mothers are always on a run. Always their shoes have to be tied.
Yes. But it pays off. And these days they can help you set up a computer, an online session for recording.
Because I see that now.
Yeah.
And that's the role that I always enjoyed and enjoy the most, I would say.
Yes. So how many children do you have?
Have 2 children, quite disciplined children that who made it possible for what I am today. 2 children. One is the boy. First is a boy. Second is a girl. Boy just completed his bachelor's in international business studies. He went to UK, University of Birmingham. Now he started his work with Standard Chartered Bank.
Wonderful.
Yeah, he's 24 plus. My daughter is finishing her O levels.
Okay.
Yes.
Still very young. Okay.
Still language, yes.
Yeah. So motherhood is a full-time job already. So when and why did you start to go into like formal training for your singing and also pursuing that diploma in freelance journalism?
Everything happened parallelly around 98, 99, somewhere around there. My father-in-law is a doctor. He's a well-known physician. He had his medical practice. He had his clinic in the Serangoon Road. For close to about 40 years, he had his practice. Ours is an established family, and and we could afford to have helpers, and we could afford to have caretakers for the children. So at that time, I do take care of my children, but always I had help and more time. So I thought, why don't we study something rather than knowledge is never waste. I always believe in that. So, you can be a good mother, you can have a good family, but it will narrow down your exposure. This is a wider world. So you should have some passion and you should have some deviation. So I thought I never thought I would make big, or I never thought I want to make big. I just thought we should study something to keep ourselves equipped. So I did my freelance journalism. Why I chose freelance journalism was that I can do things at my own pace. I can balance my many things. That's the reason I took freelance journalism. If it is journalism, or if it is a proper other kind of courses that may require you to work full time for someone 9-to-5 job. Freelance journalism means you choose when you want to write and for whom you want to write. That's the reason I chose freelance journalism. And until I started my course, I never knew I can write well.
She has indeed written 8 books in Tamil and English, and also released 5 music albums, one of which we're listening to right now, 10 couplets of Tirukural in music Carnatic ragas. A freelance journalist and a vocalist, she is the founder of Kala Manjari, an organization that promotes Tamil classical music. Today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan, and Soundara's Singapore story continues after the news in under 10 minutes. I'm Eugene Lowe for Singapore Stories, CNA 938.
Singapore Stories with Eugene Lowe. She has written 8 books in Tamil and English, and has released 5 music albums, and has published more than 100 articles in Singapore, India, and across the globe. All this while being a young mother.
Ours is an established family, and we could afford to have helpers, and we could afford to have caretakers for the children. So at that time, I do take care of my children, but always I had help and more time. So I thought, why don't we study something rather than knowledge is never waste. I always believe in that. So, you can be a good mother, you can have a good family, but it will narrow down your exposure. This is a wider world. So you should have some passion and you should have some deviation. So I thought I never thought I would make big, or I never thought I want to make big. I just thought we should study something to keep ourselves equipped.
A freelance journalist and a vocalist, she is the founder of Kala Manjari, an organization that promotes Tamil classical music. Today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan.
Though in schools I wrote well, I spoke well in English and Tamil, both I was more a language person. So I knew I can do, but I never knew I can write. First paper when I wrote, and it was the first paper when I wrote, it was almost 4 to 5 years since I had completed my bachelor's. So I thought I wouldn't make it. So for the money that I paid, I thought I should try out the first paper. So I wrote it. But when I got my results, this was so surprising and shocking. The lecturer had told me, you have a lot of potential, you have a lot of skills, and if you work hard, definitely you will become a good writer. That remarks made me very inspirational, and I thought I must work on it. Then I started to talk to many journalist friends. When I finished that diploma with all higher distinction, then I thought I can do something, I can express my feelings through my writings. Then I finished it. At that time, it was the web page designing was upcoming at that time. So my friend suggested, web page designing is very easy to learn. You take a small course in it, then you start your own magazine. You can manage your family, you can pursue your musical interests as well as you can write. That made a bigger difference. That was in 2000. Then I took up a web page designing course. I started my e-magazine called Online Voice. That was at that time it was once in 3 months, because my first son was very young. As you told me that you have to juggle with a number of things. Yes, I agree. I understood that fact. Then I took smaller steps. I didn't rush. I took smaller steps. For 1 or 2 years, I had it for 3 months. Through that magazine, I started to write more articles. When that articles were well received, I then sent it to bigger publications. Then the bigger publications got it published. That's how the smaller steps were taken.
Yeah. And I hear you, since then, you've been published in more, around the world, really, right?
Yeah, now it's been 2 decades since I'm into writing.
Over 100 articles published in Singapore, India,
yes,
the US, Congo, Hong Kong, around the world, really. So, what do you write about? I mean, what are the things that are close to your heart?
First, I wrote about, as I come from India, I have a lot of contacts in India, especially in Chennai and Tamil publications, especially. So, first, when I went there, when you are interested, when you want to publish your articles, obviously you will go and meet some publications, right? That's the normal thing. Whenever I go, my family is back in India. So once in a year during my son's school holidays, every year I go to India for a month. So when I went and asked few publications, they suggested you are in Singapore and you can write about Singapore and how Tamil is, how Tamil is living, how Tamil is a living language in Singapore, and articles pertaining to the Tamil diaspora, Indian diaspora. If you write, then it will meet our target audience. So always my subject had been about Singapore, the traveling, how to travel to Singapore from India, how temples do function, how I'm sure you would be familiar with Thaipusam.
Of course,
yes, how Thaipusam is celebrated for 2-3 days, with the chariots parading on the road in Singapore, in a foreign country. How is it possible? What makes it possible? These things were interested. They wanted articles on this, and some suggested how Chinese practice our certain Indian elements like dancing. Why do they want to take up Indian dancing? Chinese taking up Indian dancing, Chinese eating Indian food. What attracts them? So these they suggest what they want. So basically, it's about the Indian diaspora in Singapore. My earlier articles were on that.
Nice. And you also worked like part-time in Tamil, Murasu, and as a tutor at the NUS.
So after 7 or 8 years, then my daughter was born. So I didn't want to opt for full-time job even at that time. What happened when I had my e-magazines every month, once in 3 months, when I had to publish, I need to collect certain articles. So I had a structure: recipes, articles, interviews, viewpoint articles, culture. So I had a structure. So when I had to interview people, that was a great blessing, I would say. I took an interview with the former Finance Minister of India, Mr. P. Chidambaram, and the former Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Mr. Kalangai Karunanidhi, former Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu. All these people I interviewed in the formative years of my writing career. These articles, this one made me reach more people, and I was able to publish more of my articles with confidence in many publications. So during this first 7 or 8 years of my writing journey, though I was a freelance journalism, many doors were opened. As I said, I met many celebrities. I took interviews of them. Those interviews, now I got it as a book. Those collections of articles over 20 years, I published it into a book now.
Today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan, who has written 8 books in Tamil and English, has published more than 100 articles in Singapore, India, and across the globe, and released 5 music albums as a vocalist. And we're listening to an excerpt from one of those albums, 10 couplets of Tirukural in the music Carnatic ragas.
அந்தனம் தாழ் சேர்ந்தார் கல்லால் பிறவாழி நீந்தலரிது அறவழி அந்தனம் தாழ் சேர்ந்தார் கல்லால் பிறவாழி நீந்தலரிது.
And Soundara's Singapore story continues in a while. I'm Eugene Lowe for Singapore Stories on CNA 938.
Singapore Stories with Eugene Lowe.
She has written 8 books in Tamil and English and has released 5 music albums, has published more than 100 articles in Singapore, India, and across the globe.
After that 7-8 years, then when my children grew bigger, older, when they went to school, I thought why don't we try working for some publications? Then at that time, I took my master's course in South Australian University, the communications management. With bachelor's and with little working experience, you cannot go for bigger publications to work for bigger publications. So essentially, you need a master's. So I completed that master's in 2 years' time.
A freelance journalist and a vocalist, she is the founder of Kala Manjari, an organization that promotes Tamil classical music. Today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan.
With my master's in my hand, I opted to work part-time again because I wanted to do my magazine, wanted to take care of my children. I wanted to continue my singing career.
Yes, and we will get to your singing in just a short while. But first, you modestly refer to yourself as a freelance journalist, and yet you have 100 articles published, and you've written 8 books in Tamil.
My first book got published in 2009.
Yeah, that's very prolific.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let's get to the music then. You also have released 5 music albums. So tell me about these albums. What are they released on? What are they about? What is your involvement?
Again, it's all about in Singapore, how Tamil is being neutered in Singapore. One music album is about that. Sing Tamil and Tamils in Singapore. I have also got a book on Tamil community and the making of modern Singapore. So that music album, 6 local poets wrote the poems, and the fresh tune was given by Dr. K. Shivaraj. He was tutoring at Singapore Indian Fine Arts Society. I took classes under him. So he was the one who trained me and who scored the music for those 6 poems. Those 6 poems were about how Mr. K. Sarangapani, how he dedicated his life to make Tamil a living language in Singapore. One song was on that. Another song was how Tamil is being neutered through schools, and another how Tamil arts are in Singapore, and about how Tamil organizations, Tamil associations are contributing towards the growth of Tamil language in Singapore. So they're basically about how Tamil is a living language in Singapore. That was the one music album that I got it in 2017, and recently it was a religious music album. It's called Thiruvirattai Manimalai. that was written about 1,000 years back by a Tamil poet, Karekalamayar. So it was about, it's purely religious. The lyrics are already written. The music was scored by my music teacher, Srimati Gauri Gokul. That was the latest album. And the other 3 albums, one is about, have you heard of Tirukkural?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah,
it's very famous.
Very famous Tamil literary work. And it has got translated in many languages, including Chinese and Malay, Mandarin and Malay. Yeah. So we got the explanations from Tamil scholars in all these 4 languages, English, Tamil, Mandarin and Malay. We got the explanations, and I took 10 couplets. There are 1,330 couplets total. I took the first 10 couplets and then I sang for that. So the 5 music albums were on about Singapore and about Tamil literature.
தனக்குவமை இல்லாதான் தாழ் சேர்ந்தார் கல்லால் மனக்கவலை மாற்றல் அரிது தனக்குவமை.
And you founded an organization that promotes Tamil classical music, right? It's Kala Manjari.
Yes, it was in 2018. Yeah, over the years I have been concentrating on my writing music as I told you, in small steps. Then I started to write books. I wrote 8 books over the period of 10 to 12 years. I would say since 2009 to 2000. Yes, this May I got my 8th book published. And so I thought Tamil is one of the official languages, and then government supports for the growth of Tamil language in Singapore. And there are a lot of Tamil literatures which has values that's relevant all time and for all ages. So I thought, why don't we ourselves start an organization? I was part of Singapore Tamil Writers Association. So when I was part of Singapore Tamil Writers Association, I learned how to plan, how to organize events, how to invite speakers, and how to reach it to public, and what subjects to take over, and then how to organize events. I got the knack of doing these things. So I thought I was confident enough to start an organization on my own. There are many organizations that promote Tamil language. I thought, why don't I combine both my writing skills as well as my singing skills and start something where I can bring out the Tamil literature and give fresh music tunes and bring out the values to the younger generation. That was my idea when I started Kalamanjari in 2018. So I discussed with my friend and she suggested, yes, why don't we start? She was of great help, Ms. Varna, when I started, and we registered that organization. In that, what we do, we take the work of Tamil scholars and we give fresh tunes to those songs. We get the meanings of those songs in English whenever it's possible, or we invite some scholars or some speakers to talk about that subject. And it's basically to add more color to our programs. We have dance programs as well, newly choreographed dance programs. We invite the local schools to do it.
I see. So you sort of like organize and produce musical performances that are live mostly.
Mostly, yes. We had about 5 to 6. This was in 2018. Only until 2019 we could have live performances. Then COVID came. Still, online was helping us to still continue with our performances.
Sure. So, Soundara, what are you working on these days?
These days, my concentration is more on the Kalamanjari, building up Kalamanjari. We have also started our school, music school. We have 2 teachers and over 25 to 30 students. In that school we teach Tamil songs. If it is when it is Carnatic music, you have Sanskrit, Telugu, all languages in Singapore and elsewhere. If it is Carnatic music, they teach all songs, all languages songs. The ragas will be standard, but the languages can have multiple languages songs. In our school, we only teach Tamil songs, Tamil Geetam. As we progress in our lessons also, we only have Tamil. So we bring out, as I told you, we compose Tamil scholars and Tamil literature. Tamil scholars work as well as Tamil literature. We take out the Tamil literature and then we do compose songs, and then those literature are written 1,000 years or 2,000 years back, and it is in a different language. The grammar is difficult to understand. It's not in a colloquial Tamil, so it's difficult to comprehend the meaning. So what we do with the help of Tamil scholars, we just take out the meanings, and then we write it in a simple language, and then we get some scholars to talk about that so that the values will reach the people. This is what we are concentrating on now.
I see. Any plans for the foreseeable future, or you're just doing what you're doing right now first and not really thinking too much ahead?
I have never planned anything. I believe in destiny. Since I
live in the moment.
I never knew I'm going to write, or I'm going to sing, or I'm going to start, I'm going to talk with Mr. Yugen. I never knew that.
Okay.
So I don't plan anything. God has always been kind to me. I'm sure He will hold my hands ever.
A freelance journalist who has written 8 books in Tamil and English and released and published more than 100 articles in Singapore, India, and across the globe. She's also a vocalist and has released 5 music albums. Founder of Kala Manjari, an organization that promotes Tamil classical music. Today's Singapore story belongs to Soundaranayaki Vairavan.
சேர்ந்தார் கல்லால் மனக்கவலை மாற்றல் அரிது தனக்குவமை இல்லாதான் தாழ் சேர்ந்தார் கல்லால் மனக்கவலை மாற்றல் அரிது தனக்குவமை இல்லாதான் தாழ்
I'm Eugene Lowe for Singapore Stories on CNA 938.